Hey everybody, Tim Adams here with another Church Tech Hangout on air for you. It's been a while since we've had our last hangout, and today we're going to be talking about what's more important, investing in video equipment, really good quality video equipment, or investing in lighting. And for those of you that aren't familiar with either lighting or video, it's very important to understand that they're very integral to each other. You know, you can have a really nice lighting system and no video system, and it's going to look really nice. But if you don't have a good lighting system and you have a really nice video system, it doesn't matter how nice the equipment is, your image is going to look not as good as it would if it had good lighting. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to talk about some experiences we've had. We're going to look at, first of all, we're going to look at some examples that I found online in a quick Google search of some sanctuaries that could probably benefit from a good lighting system. So, and then we'll talk about, like I said, our experiences and maybe answer some questions that may come in and that kind of thing. So, first off, I'm going to pop it over to the screen share here. And just in full disclaimer, I have no idea what churches these are. I don't know where they're at. I'm just, like I said, did a Google image search and tried to find examples of sanctuaries or, church meeting rooms that really didn't take their lighting into good consideration. And lighting also affects your projection, and we're going to talk about that with this first church. So the first thing that I notice, and Charles LaJuan, go ahead and feel free to jump in here anytime, but you got these windows on the sides. And anytime you have windows in a room that you're doing projection in, you're going to risk washing out the screen, which means that you're not going to get as good contrast, you're not going to get as good color detail, and it's going to make it very difficult to read. And the room is so bright just naturally with all those windows that it makes me wonder why the lights are even on, but that's beside the point. In a situation like this, you have a fairly narrow or a fairly shallow stage here. I'd say that's maybe 8.5 feet from that front step to where that table is. And what that means is that your lights have to be closer to the stage than, if you had a deeper stage, because you need shadows that are being cast by your lights to fall off before they hit that back wall. So in this situation, you also have the unfortunate reality that the further back people are on that stage, the more likely it is they're going to be casting shadows onto the projection screen, because their head and their shoulders and however far back they go is going to be getting into the beam of the projector. So that's something that you want to think about, not just in terms of lighting for video, but you want to light in a situation where there is projection going on, so that shadows are not being cast onto the screen. Charles, am I covering this okay? Are you seeing something that I'm not?
No, pretty much. This kind of mirrors our sanctuary situation. The only difference is instead of us having windows that are kind of over brightening the situation, it's just our lighting in general. There's a lot of floodlight filling everything, and that's kind of an example of what this is showing.
Sure.
The light is not necessarily focused on the focal points you need to focus. Boy, that sounds funny. But anyways, the light is not necessarily focused on the focal points you want to focus on. If I can't say focus even one more time. Anyways. But that's the case, when you're doing video, if you want to provide the light, what you're going to, here I do it again, focus your video on. But the projection, on the other hand, you don't want the light spilling over into your projection. And really, this sort of setup here with the projection screen being behind the stage is kind of a very tricky situation. And honestly, I'm kind of stumped as to how you would light the stage but not light the screen. So I don't know. Maybe that's a challenge back to you, Tim, to address that.
Well, actually, I have a couple examples in another window that we'll get to. Kind of a similar situation. I had a little more vertical separation between the bottom of the screen and the top of people's heads, but they had a very similar situation, not necessarily because they had wash light from the windows, but it was just the lighting system that they had was antiquated and, didn't really suit the need that they had. So I'm going to move on to the next one here. And this is something that I see very commonly, and that is, well, we're just going to light everything with chandeliers, and including the stage. We're going to put two chandeliers over the stage. Now you notice that there's no projection screen in this particular room, and I would say that in a small church like this, that's probably more common than not, although I think that's beginning to change even out in the rural churches. Um, Now, why that is a matter of debate, but you can see that we're not getting a lot of outside light that's blindingly bright like in the previous one, like in this one. This is a much more controlled environment insofar as the outside light is not brighter, shall we say, than the inside light. However, the inside light is really bright. And if you were trying to shoot video in here, you probably would have enough light to get fairly good exposure. The issue is that getting enough light to get good exposure is only, I mean, it might be half of the equation when you're doing video. The other half would be you need light coming from behind your subject, the people in this case on the stage or the platform, to separate them from the background, which ideally is either the same lighting intensity as their face or slightly darker or less intense or less bright, because that helps bring the person forward, and it, like you were saying, Charles, it helps focus the eye onto the person and not the background. The background should always complement and not distract. So as you're looking at your stage, as you're looking at the front of your church, and I know a lot of churches are going through a process where they're talking about what should the stage look like. A lot of churches are implementing video ministries, and they're beginning to understand that, well, their church doesn't look as good through the lens of a camera as it does to the naked eye. And so they're having to think about, okay, well, from this angle we are seeing this background and it's not very attractive, so what can we do? So as far as whether you're doing uplighting with LEDs or some other colored light, or whether you're doing some kind of a textured background, fabric, whatever it is, remember that you don't want your background to be any brighter than the light on the people, because the people should be the focal point. So let's move on to the next one. This is also a situation where you've just got uncontrolled side light from those windows. And I mean, this is just crazy, the amount of light that's coming in here. And the other thing that you want to realize with lighting is that when you have this kind of natural daylight coming in, your color temperature is going to be all over the map, particularly if you have a tungsten or an incandescent-based light source that you're trying to light your stage with, or even in your chandeliers. And then you have this more blue sunlight coming in. For a camera, that's going to be really difficult to distinguish between, and it's not going to make people on camera look their best. So you kind of have to decide, are you going to treat the windows with some kind of a gel to change that into more of an orange light, or are you going to change your interior lighting to match the more the cooler blue of the daylight. That's a conversation that you need to have because the camera is not like our eyes. You know, our eyes can adjust very, very easily for changes in light temperature or color temperature, I should say, lighting conditions, and that kind of thing. It's very forgiving. A camera, not so much. You know, you have to tell the camera what white looks like under the light that you're shooting it. And so the camera kind of relies on you to do that. And just because your camera may have auto white balance doesn't mean you should trust it. In fact, it's very, very rare that I will shoot on auto white balance because it's burned me so many times because, you know, if I move my camera 2 feet to the left, if I pan 2 feet to the left, the lighting could be completely different over there. And you know, all of a sudden my image is orange, and I don't know why. I move it back to the center, and it looks natural. So that's not the kind of thing you want to put out on a live stream. So, you know, in a situation like this, what I would probably do is I would probably treat the lights because it's going to be cheaper to be a more daylight. But, you know, again, we're in a situation where there's no projection. But if there were, this would be a really, really tough room to do projection in without treating the windows, putting maybe a neutral density gel over them to knock that intensity of the light down. So, you know, with cars, you tint the windows. So this would essentially be tinting the church windows to a certain degree. So, any questions, guys? Is this all making sense? Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up. Sweet. All right, moving on. So I apologize for the slight blurriness on this particular image, but if you look at the projection screen, you'll notice that it's completely washed out because of that chandelier. And then at the very top of the chandelier chain on the beam, it looks to me, now, I'm not claiming that I know exactly what kind of light it is, but it looks to me like one of those clamp-on halogen work lights that you can get at like Home Depot or something that you'd use to work on your car. Are you guys seeing what I'm talking about? Okay. And they're really great for lighting up a wide area as a floodlight, a wash light. Unfortunately, there's no control over the light spread. And so what you have is a situation where they're probably trying to project on that screen, and without realizing that by just taking those chandeliers down, like just completely removing them, because if you think about it, they really serve no purpose in their current position. People will say, oh, well, they're lighting the stage. Well, if you want to light the stage, then do it right. Do it with lighting fixtures that are built for that purpose. So if they just remove those, then they could buy a lower lumen projector and get better images. Because right now, the way it is, you would probably be hard-pressed to see anything on that screen with a projector under, I don't know, 6,000 lumens? I mean, that is a lot of light on that screen. The other thing I want to point out is it seems that there is an awful lot of light coming from the right side. So if you were behind the podium there, it would be coming from your front left. Because you guys can't see my mouse, can you? No? Okay, I didn't think so. So if you look at the podium, you'll notice that there's a lot of light over here on our right and in the center, but there's not a lot of light over here on that left panel. And so what you get is you get this really unbalanced lighting scheme where, in this case, the right side of my face, if I was standing up there, would be much darker than the left side. And on camera, that looks absolutely terrible. It's great if you're filming a drama, like a film, and you need a dramatic lighting effect. But when you're doing something at church, you want flat lighting, you want even lighting, you want soft lighting. And there are various ways to do that. Um, that's, I think, all I had to say about this one. I think, in the interest of symmetry, there's probably another chandelier light behind the screen. And again, I would advise just dropping those. They are lighting back there, yes, but the angle at which they're lighting is not going to provide very good light on camera, because it's directly overhead. And the ideal angle, any of you that have listened to me talk about lighting before, is a 45-degree angle down from up above. It's low enough that it gets under the eyebrows, but it's high enough that it is fairly good at being out of the person's eyes, which is good. And you get this nice little glint in people's eyes as well. We call it an eye light. Moving on, another situation where we have some fairly nice looking chandeliers, honestly. You have a lot of can lights in the ceiling. Not sure why they didn't opt to go for a second projection screen on the right here. That just messes with my OCD and my sense of symmetry, but hey, whatever. But again, this chandelier, that looks like it's right over the stairs there, is creating a fair amount of wash light on the projection screen. So we have another situation where if they would get rid of that chandelier, they could go with probably a lower lumen projector. Now this is a more traditional stage. It's fairly wide. You've got a fair amount of depth there. Yeah, I mean, you've got the seating for the choir and that kind of thing, but you've got a situation here where you've got a really nice stage, that would give you some really nice camera angles, and at least from the sides. But what are you going to be shooting into on the sides? Well, depending on the angle, you're going to be getting this grating over the door here on the left, and then again the mirror image over there. You're going to get the red exit sign. You might get the Christian flag. If you go with a steeper angle, you'll get this corner here with the plants, which, if you toss an LED uplight on that, that could look nice. If you uplit the walls, or if you did something with the walls back here, be it a gobo projection, or, I mean, there are a lot of things you can do with lighting that make things just look amazing. If you put some LED tape on the back of these screens and left them pulled down, you could backlight the screen with color, and I mean, that would look awesome. But again, anything you do has to blend with the culture of the church, and this may be a fairly traditional conservative church, and they don't want a whole bunch of fancy colored lighting and that kind of thing, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. They just, any decision you make with lighting, just make sure it's intentional. So with this one, you got these can lights up here that are providing some downlight. Unfortunately, we don't know if there's any front light, and I would venture to say that there's not. There's no fixtures outside of the frame here at the top that are lighting this from the front, and that's really unfortunate, because even if you don't have a camera system, here's the thing: if you set up a lighting system using 3-point lighting, so you have two lights from the front that are equal in angle, and then you have a light from the back, like I said, we call it a backlight or a hair light, to separate the subject from the background, that's going to look awesome to the audience, regardless of whether there are cameras there or not. If you just light it to look good for the audience, it's not necessarily going to look good for a camera. And you may not have a video ministry, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with not having one. There's a lot of noise and clutter out there with churches saying, watch our live stream, and come and subscribe to our YouTube channel and that kind of thing. And when people ask me as a consultant, or they tell me, we're interested in getting a live stream ministry going, I ask them, why? What is the point? What is the purpose of you having a live stream? Now, if you just want to provide a service that, you know, your members or people that are interested in your church can watch, great, no problem. You know, maybe you've got some church members that are traveling or they're out of the country, or, you know, for various reasons you have people that can't always make it to church, you know, because they're sick or they're elderly or, you know, whatever the reason. I have no problem with that. But if your pastoral leadership cannot commit to having consistent messages that cut through all the clutter out there, then I'm sorry. That's not a good enough reason to have it, because you're just adding to the noise and to the clutter. And the worst reason to have a live streaming ministry is because the church down the street has one. You know, this is not, church tech is not an area in church that you need to keep up with the Joneses. You need to do it if it's right for you. That's the bottom line. So this is the last one, and this is one that initially caught my eye as, well, at least they're trying. But the more I look at this, the more I'm just genuinely puzzled. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here a little bit. And I apologize for the pixelation. But what we see here is on the left, we have, they're all par cans, first of all. But on the left here, on the far left, we have two par cans that look like they're aimed on the stairs over to what would be stage left. Maybe they have a children's story over there quite often, and so they want to light that up. Moving to the right, we have two more par cans that are there to light the audience. So perhaps they do audience shots. There's another camera besides this one at the back. Who knows? Again, over on the right side here, the left pair aimed at the audience, but the angle on this leftmost one on the right is very odd. You know, it's like lighting them from the side, which if you're shooting, like if I had a camera at this position where this photo was taken and I'm aiming over to the left here, the lighting is just going to be atrocious. Again, it's going to be that really dramatic side light. One side of the face is lit, the other side is not. It just does not make sense to me. And then over on the far right, we have, hey, look at that. We have lights aimed at the stage. Great. Now, that's a little shallower of an angle. That's not 45 degrees off center. So I'm not as thrilled with that, but at least they have lights aimed at the stage. Great. That's awesome. But if we go back over to the left here, there's no matching pair aimed at me. And in fact, if you look at the rear, let me zoom out here. If we look at the rear pair of par cans that are further back at the back of the auditorium here, yeah, they'll hit me, but again, they're so far back that these closer pars are going to be brighter on my right side of my face than these two in the back are going to be on the left side of my face. So now you have this situation where in order to balance those out, I have to have this front pair down at probably 40% intensity and this rear pair at 100% intensity to get anywhere close to a balanced look on this camera as far as a lighting situation. So this just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't understand why you would do this. Maybe there's some rhyme and reason to it, and you know, I'm not here to tear apart how churches are doing it. You know, at least they made an effort, which is, you know, more than I can say for a lot of churches. You know, a lot of churches, they just don't think about it. The other thing that concerns me is there's this rear projector here, and it looks like they're using it to project on this rear wall for people on the stage to see lyrics and that kind of thing. But it's a yellow wall. They don't even have a screen, which, okay, that's fine, but at least paint a white section of that wall so you get the best contrast and the best visibility possible. So anyway, those are some examples of just, like I said, a quick image search of what I was finding We'll go through those again just quickly. And, maybe your church is in a similar situation, and you maybe have thought about doing lighting, but you don't know what you're doing. You don't know where to start. You don't know what questions you need to ask. And, lighting is not that complicated. You don't need to be afraid of it. But like all church tech, you need to know what you don't know. And you need to understand how lighting affects things like mood. So let me come back to myself here while I do a quick screen change here. And so first off, let's talk about our experiences. Charles, did you get a chance? I didn't ask you to do this, but do you by chance have an image of your sanctuary that you could pull up real quick? You're muted, by the way.
Like a before and after?
Or just anything current.
Yeah, I can get something. It'll take me a minute or two. Bear with me.
Oh, no worries. No worries. So while you're doing that, I'll just go ahead and talk about color temperature really quickly. And let's talk about the spectrum. So in light, you go from infrared to ultraviolet. And infrared would be on the warm side of the spectrum, and color temperature is measured in degrees Kelvin instead of like degrees Fahrenheit or degrees Celsius. So named after, of course, the guy who created it, the spectrum, or not the spectrum, but the color temperature scale. So the lower the number in degrees Kelvin, the redder the light. So, for example, the light that I have here, it's an LED light, is based off of an incandescent or tungsten-based filament light. So that would be like a 2800 to a 3200 degrees Kelvin. Daylight is 5600 degrees Kelvin, and that is why when you walk out into the sun after being inside all day under incandescent lighting, you walk out and everything looks blue, because it's a bluer light, or at least that's how we interpret it. So that's why in the case of that one church, the overall effect of the lighting was blue. So let me go back to that screen share real quick, and we'll just go to that. Oops, let's see, can I get on the right thing here? So this one. So yeah, I know it's a blue carpet, but if you look at this kind of wall over here, it's got a blue tinge to it, and that's because the color temperature setting, or the white balance setting on the camera, is not set to daylight, it's set to indoors, or to a 3200 degrees Kelvin. It's set to represent white as what white would look like under a warmer light, or a more orange or a more red light. So that's why I was saying on a camera, on a video camera, on a regular still camera, you have to tell the camera what white is. Otherwise, it's going to take its best guess, and it might get it wrong. So the more things that you can control, the more variables you can control in your video system, the better production you're going to have. So, Lawan, we haven't heard from you. And this sanctuary, this image in particular, kind of reminds me of your church. And not just because it's all wood, but if I recall, you have windows on the side as well.
Yeah, we do. But they're back farther in the church and not that far to the front.
Right.
Plus it's stained glass, so they let light in, but we have shades for them. So that when it's too bright, it doesn't.
Yeah, they pull them down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right.
And the window behind the church in the back has stained glass, so it's not so bright.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Well, we got speakers like that now. We don't have any lights, but we got speakers.
Yes, yes, you definitely have speakers, big black ones.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I'm going to stop sharing that temporarily, and I'm going to do that. Charles, are you ready?
Yeah, I got two pictures to show. One is before we made any changes to lighting. One is after we've made some adjustments. Granted, they're not perfect, but it's a change. So whatever you want me to share.
Yeah, go for it. Just
All
pop one
right.
up and let's see what we have.
All right. Well, this is the before one coming up. So this was kind of before we made any changes to our church. It was like when we first started live streaming. And you can kind of see here that, we've got a lot of what I would call floodlight in the room floating kind of everywhere from those lights on the far left and right sides. And then we had, of course, as you can see, too much backlighting because of how the stained glass is really bright. And then you've got those two hot spots on the brick. And then our other trouble spot was that our lighting coming down, of course, is not at a 45-degree angle. It's from those, I call them recessed can lights that you can kind of focus on a spot. And those, weren't really bright enough. Plus, they're not at the desired angle. Now, granted, we have a short ceiling, so trying to get at the lighting at a desirable angle is, I wouldn't say impossible, but highly improbable. So that's kind of the way our church looked when we first started. Now, this second shot is not complete reality. As you can see, the projector's gone from the ceiling. This was a shot that I kind of digitally edited to visualize whether or not we got another projector to replace one that went out, or if we got a TV. So that the pastor on there on the screen looks like, wow, that's an awesome projector. It looks great. But no, that's Photoshop. But I will testify that other than that, nothing else in the picture is Photoshopped. And you can see, we've changed some lighting there. You can see per this camera shot, the lighting coming down from above is very, very bright now. I mean, it really lights even some of the ceiling in this, still photo frame. But when you're viewing this through a video camera, it's pretty good. Once again, we've adjusted some of the lighting on the brick. As you can see there, it's more even and fluid, not so much hot spotted like it was before. Stained glass is still a little bright, but it's better than it was.
Right. So go back to the before.
Okay, just a moment. Back to the before.
And after.
And the after.
Okay, so yeah, you guys definitely knocked down that light on the rock.
Mm-hmm.
And not just that, it almost seems like it diffused some.
Yes.
It's not quite as spotty.
Yeah, we did some redneck engineering to diffuse the lighting, but yes, we diffused the light.
Excellent.
I won't go into details unless you're absolutely curious, but then you might just roll your eyes when you hear what we did.
No. We're good. We're good. Well, I mean, and you see, that's the thing is, even if you're a small church, ingenuity is your best friend. And there are solutions to the issues, and what it takes is meeting with other people that think differently than you, and together brainstorming solutions. Not everybody has the budget for bringing somebody like me in to say, okay, this is how you need to do it, and this is the equipment you need to do it, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The only thing that the only issue or situation that I would say it's absolutely critical that you bring in a professional is when you're hanging things over people's heads. And like heavy things like speakers and light grids and really big projectors, that kind of thing. The liability alone is worth the couple $100 or whatever it's going to take to get a certified rigger out there to do that. So just putting that out there. Ultimately, it's up to you. I'm not going to say that you have to do it one way or another, but that's my recommendation as a consultant. All right, so getting back to mood, this is a youth room, and I know it's not a sanctuary, but this room has been like this since the church was built in 1983. Fluorescents everywhere. And I don't know about you, but when I walk into a room where the only lighting is fluorescent, it makes me feel like I'm walking into an office, just because that's what I associate fluorescent lights with. And so after many years of painful arguing and struggle, we finally got somebody to listen to the proposal of putting in not only different lights, but different color temperature. And look at the difference. I mean, that's just, it's warm, it's inviting, it feels more like a home, it feels more like a really big living room. So this is what I'm talking about, mood. Lighting can play a huge role in establishing the mood in a room, the atmosphere in a room. So, I mean, I could do this all day long, back and forth, back and forth. It's the same room. And you can see we didn't take the fluorescents out. They're still there if they want to use them. But what we did is we added somewhere in the neighborhood of 24-ish, 24 to 30 LED downlights that were the warm white, or sometimes they call them the soft white. But it's that incandescent color temperature. And yeah, the intensity of the light went down, and so some people would look at this transition and they're like, oh, well, you know, it's much darker and it's not as bright. But I can guarantee you there's plenty of light in there to read. There's plenty of light to do whatever it is that you need to do in there. But it's not harsh. It's much softer. It's much more inviting. Now, I did promise that I was going to show you a situation that I walked into, that I was brought into, in order to improve the quality of the light for a video ministry that had been running for close to 2 decades. And it had been running for that length of time under these lighting conditions. So when they told me that they wanted a change, I immediately knew that it had to be drastic. It had to be a really big improvement. Otherwise, they weren't going to feel like they got their money's worth. So here's the after. And as you can tell, the intensity of the light on the stage went up dramatically. We also lit up the piano and the organ there over on the left there. And we also took light off the screen, as you can see. And I don't know about you, but that's a huge difference to me. And we were able to accomplish that with 5 lighting fixtures. That's it. Now, granted, you know, we have quite a bit of height here to work with, so you know this solution would not work in a place like Charles's church. But my point in showing you this, you know, before and after, is to show you that you don't need huge amounts of lighting fixtures to light your stage. You just need the right kind of fixtures, and you really just need to be told what to do with them, honestly. So let's get some reactions. So Charles, what do you think of that transition there? Let's go back first to the youth room. What are your thoughts on this change?
I mean, definitely gives it a mood. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm from the camp that I'm like, mood, who cares? But I mean, if you're into that sort of thing, it definitely achieves the point. So I'll give it that. Now, the next 2 pictures, if you want to go back to the sanctuary, yeah, that's a dramatic improvement, especially from video. I can tell you, with what we're doing, that would be awesome. But like you mentioned, we've got the challenge of a low ceiling, as well as what you shared in the previous example of the screen having too much light on it. They didn't have as low a ceiling as ours, but it is lower than this one. So yeah, to achieve those kind of goals of really brightening the stage yet not brightening the screen, and they're all kind of in the same area, I would guess height is your friend is the best way to state that. Correct, Tim?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is, and you know, to a certain degree. You know, when I was doing the lighting at that GYC event last month, you know, I had, I don't know, 50-foot ceilings, and so I had too much height. but we could only go up 21 feet with the lighting rig, and so I ended up having a really, really shallow lighting angle because I was throwing, the light was having to go like 45 feet. And so, whatever the angle is, it was much shallower than I would have wanted to mount them at, but I didn't have a choice. So, ultimately, the ending statement, I guess, would be, you got to do the best that you can with what you have to work with. And, I'm not going to be the guy to sit here and tell you that, well, you're doing it wrong because you need this and you need that. I can give you options, but ultimately it's the space itself that is going to be the ultimate deciding factor, or limiting factor, if you want to look at it that way. It's my job as a consultant when I come in to look it over, use my expertise, use my experience to say, okay, these are your options, but these are the pros and the cons of all of your options. But it's up to you to make the decision. I can make a recommendation. I can say, okay, I would, if I were doing it, I would prefer it this way versus that way. But ultimately, I don't know what the culture is at the church. I can ask, but I haven't been there for 10 years like some of the people that I've been talking to for 20 years. So I'm not as in touch with the culture and with the design aesthetic that they're going after as or the sensibilities or the sensitivities that they need to be aware of. So ultimately, getting back to video equipment, lighting equipment, hopefully what I have shared or what we've talked about has indicated or has kind of cemented the importance of lighting. And what I tell people is if you're struggling between where to invest the most money, I would invest it in the lighting because it's going to serve you better longer than investing in high quality video equipment. Because like I said at the very beginning, you can have a $500,000 multi-camera live production system, but if your lighting is terrible, then the best video equipment in the world is not going to make it look as good as really good, proper, applicable lighting that is right for you. And knowing what's right for you is the hard part. What fixtures are going to affect your lighting and how they're going to affect it. What's your budget versus what you can raise and that kind of thing. What I walk into a lot of times is I'll see track lighting, like consumer track lighting that it lights up. That's about the only effect it has, and that's from 10 feet. So, there are options for places like your church, Charles. ETC makes a kind of a professional grade track light, but it's a Source 4 track light. But again, the issue you're going to run into is your low ceiling. That's your limiting factor, And so how do you get around that? Well, really the only way to get around that is to kick your lights out even further than that 45 degrees. Unfortunately, on that one side, now you're interrupting the view, the viewing angle, or the sight line, that's what we call it, of the projection screen, potentially. So, Charles, I've said it before, but you have arguably one of the most difficult lighting situations that I've come across. And, I always enjoy looking at it because it reminds me of, just exactly what it is that you have working against you. And I think you guys have done fairly well with what you have to work with. Lawan's church is very open. It's very tall. I mean, I think your apex is somewhere probably around 25, 30 feet, I'm guessing. No. Lower or higher? He's going to mute himself.
I don't know. I never measured it, but it's kind of high. No, let me think. Had to change the bulb on the projector. Probably 20 some feet. 25 feet, maybe?
Yeah, okay. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, when you're looking at a ceiling from the floor, to me, I struggle with accurately gauging that because I always guess too much. I guess it's higher than it really is. And I don't know if that's a condition. Maybe I should get it checked out anyway. But the important thing to know is, what are the strengths of your space, and what are the drawbacks? What are the limitations? And then once you clearly understand those, then you understand what the context, the frame that you have to work within. So in my church, we're a mobile church, and so we have to light off of lighting trees and from the back. And so the lighting is just, I cringe every time we turn the lights on because I know how good the lighting can be, but just not yet. And so sometimes what we have to do is we just have to wait. We just have to say, okay, like for me, it's like, okay, I have to wait until we get our own building. And when that happens, then, man, we're going to have awesome lighting. And I know that because there's going to be a whole bunch of us that are invested in having the best quality tech that we can get. And that doesn't mean that we're going to have top-of-the-line stuff. That's not the point. The point is we're going to have what's right for us. And, if that's a combination between consumer-grade equipment for downlight and professional-grade equipment for the stage, great. That's what works for us. The other thing to remember is that there is no one solution that fits everybody, and that's universal across, audio, lighting, projection, video. There's no one package that fits everybody's needs, and I'm glad for that. I'm very thankful for that, because if there was, that would be really boring. It would just be really boring for me not only as a consultant, but it would be boring for everybody because nobody's doing anything different. Nobody's doing anything new, or dare I say it, exciting and groundbreaking. And that's what I love about churches, is that there are churches out there that are just pushing the envelope of what tech is capable of doing. There's churches out there that are pushing the boundaries of our comfort zones, and that's a good thing. There are churches out there who are very conservative and very traditional, and you know what to expect. You can set your watch by the bulletin, by the order of service. You know that 10 minutes till 12, they're going to be picking up the offering. And for a very large group of people, having that consistency, having that reliability, that predictability is very comforting. So I'm getting way off base. I'm rambling. I'm sorry. I just get excited. So ultimately, I would choose lighting to invest your money in over video. I don't know what the guys' opinions are. Charles, what do you think? Have I made my case?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, having a good quality camera helps. I come from the camp of, I can get by with a consumer-grade camera versus, the more expensive one out there. But once again, look at the budget that I'm working with, But lighting I do definitely acknowledge your point that lighting can make a poor camera look better. I'll say that. And that's the best thing. When you can take something and make something else look better, then that's really the best value item.
I'll agree with that. Thanks for pointing that out, actually, because there is a point of diminishing return. And what I mean by that is, okay, you invest in a really nice lighting system, and then you go and you get a flip camera. And you're zooming in way past the optical zoom limit on that thing, and all of a sudden you're like, well, this thing looks like crap. And he said if we invested in, well, like I said, there's a point of diminishing return. Just because you're investing money or a higher percentage of your money in good quality lighting doesn't mean that you get to go as cheap as possible in the camera. You still need to understand what the difference is between optical zoom and digital zoom. You need to understand the difference between what the native resolution of a camera is. You need to understand that Um, Autofocus is not your friend. You know, there are basics in a video system that just have to be there. You know, um, in our system, in our church, it annoys me to no end. We run a camera and we run a computer feed into a Kramer switcher, scaling switcher, and every time we switch inputs, it cuts to black for like 2 seconds, and then the new signal pops up. It annoys me because there's absolutely no reason for that. For what we paid for that piece of equipment, it should just fade through black, or it should cross dissolve or something like that. But no, it was one of those situations where I was still learning, and we got a camera that didn't have a manual focus ring, even though it looked like it did. So why a manufacturer? Anyway, that's another story. Bottom line is, know what you're getting, and the only way to do that is to do the research, ask the questions, talk to the professionals, and by professionals, I don't necessarily mean people like me. You know, if you have the technical aptitude to understand the terminology, call the manufacturer, call resellers. Um, the point is, educate yourself so that you know exactly what you're going to get when you pull that thing out of the box. After it comes, you know exactly what to expect. And that doesn't mean that you have to read the manual cover to cover. It doesn't mean you have to know every in and every out, but it does mean that you know for a fact, because you asked somebody that knows, that this piece of equipment will do this function, which is what we need it for. Because the last thing you want to do is go around buying equipment that doesn't do what you need it to do. You got to send it back. It wastes people's time. There may not be a good return policy on it, and then you're wasting money, which is poor stewardship. We've gone over that many, 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 many times on this Hangout. And ultimately, the end result is you also lose credibility with your church leadership, because you're burning through money that they were not anticipating you burning through, that you were not anticipating burning through. And apologies and humility will only get you so far before they say, okay, time out. We're pulling the plug on this because we thought we were getting this, and this is what was delivered. And even though it may not be your fault, that's just the reality of how it works out sometimes. So I cannot stress enough: know what you are getting, and know the functionality that what you're going to buy is going to give you. I cannot stress that enough. So if you can do that, then I think you'll be pretty good. That was a long response to your little point there, Charles. Now, Charles has asked me to go back to this image, and what he's wanting to know is where the 5 fixtures are. And there are 2 that are flanking the screen on that beam there. Those are obvious. The other 3 are not in this frame. But I can tell you that if you look at these speakers, which are at the very, very top in the middle, those kind of somewhat curved things, those are Bose speakers. The next beam towards us, towards the camera, is where those 2 front lights are. And then there's another light over on the far left outside of frame that is lighting the organ and the piano. And that one in particular has a, what do they call it, an extremely wide lens in order to provide me about a 15 or 16 foot diameter light beam from a throw distance of about 10 feet, which we had to special order that lens. I didn't even know it existed until I called the reseller, and they said, yeah, we can get that for you. So we also gave them a dimmer, which is in the back by the booth. So all figured, I think they were out around $3 or $4 grand, but this is back in like 07, 08, somewhere in there. But they were so thrilled with the lighting that they actually use it as photography lighting. So, they'll put up a backdrop and they'll take pictures in here because they're so happy with the lighting. It's really kind of funny. So if you're curious about what kind of lights they are, we got 3 Source 4 PARs, which is the ones that you can see, and then the one over on the far left, that's a Source 4 PAR. And then the front lights are 2 Source 4 Junior ellipsoidals, or LECOs, with, I want to say, 36-degree lens tubes. And what I like about LECOs is that I have full control over the light beam, because they have shutters inside the barrel of the light that I can use to flag off or shutter off light from where I don't want it, which is really helpful. So I am a big fanboy of LECOs, that's for sure. So before we wrap this up, any more questions, guys? Comments, thoughts? Okay.
No, I was gonna say, as you talked about before you finish it, education. Find out before you spend a lot of money, and then you don't get what you spent your money on. So educate yourself.
That's a big one for you. I know that.
Yeah, it's a big one. Educate. Ask questions. Don't be scared to ask questions. Because you don't know. So ask the questions. So it'd be better you ask the questions now than later on. They're gonna ask you questions because it's not what it's supposed to be, when you could have just asked more questions. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, yeah, and I'll dovetail off of that because in that situation, who looks like the bigger idiot? I mean, not that I want to appeal to your pride, but honestly, if you fake it, at some point you'll get found out, and that's not a pleasant feeling. I'm sure we're all familiar with that feeling. It's like when you start cascading the lies on top of each other because you can't bring yourself to admit the truth. At some point, you're going to get caught in a lie because you can't remember who you told what to, or whatever. And eventually, you're going to get found out, and you're going to get called on it, and that's not a good situation to be in. That's a very awkward situation to be in. But yeah, just educate yourself. There's nothing wrong with, as my friend Todd says, playing the idiot. Acting like you don't know anything, because if you can have a teachable spirit, if you can have a student mentality, then you're going to learn things that you didn't even know you didn't know. And you're going to learn it from people that, hopefully have been doing this for a long, long time, and they know what they're talking about. And that's, one of the primary reasons why we do this hangout. Why we have this series is so that we can help disseminate information and help people think about the process of doing an upgrade, or looking at their lighting and maybe saying, hey, maybe we should do something about this. So they're looking at their audio, or listening in this case at their audio system, and saying, well, maybe it could be better, or how do I even operate this thing? I mean, there's all these knobs and these slider things, and there's buttons. I don't know what it all does. I mean, it reminds me, and again, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but I promise we will wrap up after this. It reminds me of a situation that unfortunately is all too common in churches, and that is this, so-and-so has been running the sound for 20 years, and, he's always run sound. And, he probably always will run sound until the day he dies, because that's what brings him joy. Well, that's all fine and good, but if the sound doesn't sound good, what does it matter? You get these people that become so entrenched in these positions, and they're unwilling to teach other people. They're unwilling to relinquish control, whatever control it is that they think they have, where the attitude that we should have as techs is very open, very inviting. Oh, you want to come in and you want to help? Praise God. Thank you. Because I view church tech as a situation very akin to franchising, or the dream of an entrepreneur is that you find people that are so teachable that you essentially clone yourself. They become you, which means you don't have to work so hard. When at my church, when I got, 4 or 3 other guys that could run the sound as good as well as I can, and in some cases better, um, I didn't have to be there every weekend, and that was awesome. I could actually rest and relax and take a break, and it's awesome. I would wish that on all of you. It's amazing. So why people just guard their fiefdoms, if you will, their little kingdoms, is beyond me. Is it insecurity about something? And for those people, I would encourage us to not take the attitude of, well, it's us against them. I would take the approach of, I would encourage all of us to take the approach, because I need this as well. Let's get to know them. Let's befriend them. Let's find out their story. Let's take them out to lunch. Let's hang out with them. Let's, try and be their friend, not with the hidden agenda of coming in and taking over their ministry. No, but with the hidden, well, not even the hidden agenda, but just the ulterior motive of letting them know that people do care about them and care about their heart, and genuinely want to help them. And I think that's going to break down a lot more walls than going into the senior leadership and saying, well, you need to tell them that they're done, because when they mix sound, it's terrible, and you need to have the backbone, let's say, the spine, to tell them like it is. Well, you know what? That puts the pastor or the senior leadership in a really awkward position that they really shouldn't have to be in. All right, rant over. So that's it for this week. What the topic is going to be next week, I don't know, but keep an eye in the Church Tech community on Google+, and sometime between now and this coming Friday, or this week sometime, I'll get that topic up there. It'll probably be audio related, so we may look at digital mixers versus analog mixers once again. We may look at digital snakes versus analog snakes. Who knows? But yeah, I want to thank Charles and Juan for being with us, and thank you guys for watching. And until next time, God bless, and take care of yourselves.